A motherly elf glided through her child's room as he prepared to lie down for the night. As she raised the sheets to his chin, he gave her the pleading face that could break any mother's resolve. "Mother, could you please tell me the story of the 3 elves and the human child again?" he whimpered. She glared at him disapprovingly. "Such tales are not best told prior to sleep, Ahirdas. I will concede this last time," she warned. With a flick of her wrist, the lantern by his bedside lifted into the air above his bed and began to twist and spin slowly. With an utterance from the fair elf maiden, a bright blue light began to emanate from the lantern, casting an array of changing shapes on the flat ceiling. Ahirdas snuggled back into his bed to better watch the story unfold above. "Our tale begins in an age-long past," she began. 3 elvish scouts had been contracted to investigate an anomaly past the boundaries of their land. One elf, Finwë, was an admirable warrior whose swordsmanship was fabled among his people. Aladir, the youngest of the 3, was a promising strategist whose cunning with a bow allowed him to confuse his enemy. The eldest, Estor, was a wise sorcerer with proverbs that had helped even the most stubborn kings. Upon reaching their objective, a perplexing sight befell their eyes. An injured human was crying while being taunted by a group of harpies. With a quick decisiveness, the elves cut down the beasts who would dare antagonize a child. Finwë knelt before the child to inspect her injuries. Using elvish magic, her injuries were abated, but she required more medical attention. The band of elves decided to bring her back to the village as there were no human settlements nearby. The trek home was long and not without complication. Finwë had decided the group would clear the harpy camp so that they would not be an inhibitor later. He explained to the child, whom they had named Sarah, that to save their realm, those who would combat them must be dealt with. This appeased her crying. Estor began to burn their houses to ensure that any of their elvish records of elvish movements could not be used against them. Estor explained to Sarah that knowledge of the enemy was more powerful than swords. This appeased her protests. Aladir created scarecrows from the dead harpies to dissuade future harpy gatherings in the area. Aladir explained to Sarah that fear would send a more lasting message than anything else. This appeased her disgust. The troop continued their journey home with the child in tow. They settled down and made camp for the night, as tomorrow would be their last day on the journey. Finwë was roused from his sleep as Sarah had entered his tent. He looked at her, puzzled. She quietly said, "To save my realm, those who would combat us must be dealt with. You would combat us." Before he could react, she drove a dagger through his heart. Aladir was shaken awake by Sarah. She pointed to the mouth of his tent. Obediently, he went to inspect what had frightened the impressionable girl. Outside his tent, Sarah had erected a scarecrow made from Finwë's corpse. Aladir shrieked with horror as a dagger pierced his spine, and Sarah whispered, "Fear sends a more lasting message." Estor woke to the strange sight of orange light licking the sides of his tent. He climbed out of the tent to witness the horrifying sight of his comrades burning in front of him. While he was distracted, Sarah stabbed him in the eye. As Estor fell, she showed him the spellbook and said, "Knowledge for the enemy is more powerful than a sword." Estor was found by a patrol, barely alive. He recounted his story of how simple lessons had created a monster from the innocent child. It was decided that elvish teachings were too complex to teach the impressionable humans. Ahirdas watched as the blue lights faded and his lantern was placed back on his bedside table. "Are the humans our enemy, Mother?" he asked. "This is a simple cautionary tale, so old that its origins cannot be completely traced, even by our kind. Worry not so much about stories so far in the past, young Ahirdas." She kissed his forehead and closed the door to leave him in darkness.